Hello everybody, welcome to Red Tool House. On our channel we talk about all things homesteading and try to implement some of those things on our rural 100 acres in southern West Virginia. Got some thunderclouds rolling in, so we'll see if we can do this without getting wet or electrocuted. Well, in today's video I want to talk about acreage. Homesteading, it's always a discussion around homesteading. How many acres do you have? What's the minimum amount of acreage I need to homestead? How many acres is too many acres because of property tax and all those type of things. So people throw around the word acres all the time. But what really is an acre, and are all acres the same? Are some acres larger than other acres? So when you think of an acre, what is that exactly? You know it's a unit of measure of property, but what exactly is an acre? Some would say, well, it's a football field. Some would say, well, it's a 200 by 200 square. There's all kinds of quick discussions as to what an acre is. But let's actually jump into it and look at it in detail. All right, so bear with me as we get a little geeky here, but an acre originally was based off the concept of how much land a team of oxen could plow in one day. And when looking at the original definition of an acre, it actually had a specific dimension to it. So if you think of a team of oxen plowing furrows, they would plow one furrow a distance, and that was roughly the distance you could plow with a team of oxen before they needed a rest. That was called a furlong, or a furrow long. So that team of oxen could go this length before needing a rest, and that was generally 660 feet. So that would make up the long dimension of the rectangle, the 660 feet. The short dimension of the triangle was 60 feet. So that was multiple furrows wide. I'm not quite sure how many furrows that would be, but that was the amount of ground that could be plowed by a team of oxen in one given day. So that was considered an acre. So obviously we don't use that measurement anymore. If I'd asked the typical person on the street, how much land can a team of oxen plow in one day? Probably not going to get a lot of accurate answers there. But if you take that same concept, 660 feet by 60 feet, and you do the math, you get the square footage that we still use today to determine acreage. And that total is 43,560 square feet. That's what an acre is. Now, many people have always assumed an acre is always square, that it would be that same square footage, but in a square shape instead of a rectangle. Well, that's not necessarily the case either. If you square that out, some people say, well, that's a 200 by 200 square is what an acre is. And that's close, but that's not actually accurate. If you took the square footage of a true acre and squared it, you would actually get 208.71 feet per side. So that would be, so a little bit, almost 209 feet. So 200 by 200 is close, but that's not accurate. So really the importance of understanding acreage is, how does that apply to your land use? If you're looking to homestead and you say, well, I need X amount of acres to do what I want to do, then what does that look like? Well, okay, I don't know if you can see me all the way down here. I don't even know if my mic's picking up. This is, again, here I am wearing green when I'm standing in all this green. It's like Where's Waldo, but instead of Waldo, it's like Where's Fat Boy in the Woods? Here I am. So let's try to visualize what an acre looks like. Now, trying to find a flat acre on my property is just futile. It doesn't work. So I'm going to show a half acre, and that's what I can get in my lens, and that's what I can get without climbing the side of a mountain. So if we had a starting point right here, and I picked a vector path point right behind the chicken tractors along the tree line. So from where I'm standing right here to right here is about 208 feet. Teleportation wears me out. Whew. So this line would be one leg of that 208.71 feet square. That would be an acre. Whew. So since I can't easily go this way 200 feet because hillside, we'll take a point in the middle there and then we'll just draw the rest of it out. It's the beauty of editing. So if I was going to illustrate a half acre, so the 208 feet this way, we'll look at 104 feet this direction, which takes me to about right here. Whew. If I do any more of this teleportation, I'm going to puke. So if we drew a rectangle around this area here, then this would roughly be a half acre. So it kind of gives you a visual idea. Now again, I know my wide angle lens, all that stuff kind of throws this off, and to really appreciate this, you'd have to be here. But I've always kind of estimated this front area. This is the very front of our property. The camera's sitting on the driveway going to the house. I've always estimated this at being about a half acre. And yeah, kind of. Obviously the corner from all the way down there to the corner would go up half the hillside here toward the county road. The camera angle, the camera spot would probably be that corner. So it's truly not a usable half acre. It's anything but. That gives you an idea of roughly what a half acre looks like. So imagine 2 of these is 1 acre. So when people say, can you homestead on 1 acre? You bet your butt you can. That's a lot of land. I'm tired of teleporting, so I'm going to recruit some teleportation help here. Work it, work it. Almost got it. Camo, stop at that log right there, whatever that is. All right, just stand right there for a second, catch your breath. The title of this video, are some acres bigger than others? Was that just clickbait? No, I wouldn't do that to you. But when you say that title, you got to say it with like a Scottish accent from Braveheart. Some acres are bigger than others. Not very good at my Scottish there, but anyway. Acreage is measured as 2-dimensional. So it's 43,560 square feet, but it doesn't take into consideration topography. So a good example would say, let's look at, let's say you're going to make a quilt that was 43,560 square feet in size. If you were out in the middle of the Great Plains and you laid that quilt down on the ground, you would have, that acre. Does that represent a true acre? Well, sure, it's just 2-dimensional. It's not taking topography in. But if you came to West Virginia and you did that, you would need a much bigger quilt to cover the same amount of land. So that's why I've recruited my help here. So if we look at 208.71 feet, roughly, again, I don't have the survey tools, but roughly, that's the distance from me all the way to, hey Cam, wave your hand so we can see you. Cam, all the way up there, that's about 208 linear feet from me. But you can see the elevation difference. There's Liam here with his cat. Always got to respect a man and his cat. The elevation change. Again, I'm here on the driveway, so Liam is probably 15 or 20 feet lower in elevation to me, but then Camlin is probably a good 40 feet in elevation from Liam. So there's a substantial difference. So if I would draw a 208.71 foot line from me to Camlin and keep it a straight line without having any angle to it, which it would have to be much higher, it'd start higher than I am, then that square that those 4 lines would make would still be an acre. But we actually have a lot more surface area of ground here. So it's kind of funny. We always say, well, we have 100 acres here in West Virginia, but if you were to iron that out, we'd probably have 200 acres because there's a lot of surface area as the mountains go up. We have the mountains and the benches that go up. So by saying some acres can be bigger than others, well, that's not exactly accurate. It's still 43,000 square feet, but when you look at surface area, you can have more ground to work on uneven terrain than you would on a total piece of flat land. Now granted, you may look at that and say, well, what the heck are you going to do on that? What are you going to work that? Your goats would have to have 2 legs longer than the other to even stand on that. Well, obviously we can grow trees, we can grow grass, we can grow several things. So my acreage is bigger than other people's acreage that have flatter land. All right. All right, boys, you can come back. So what's the takeaway from all this? Well, again, it's just an idea of visualizing what an acre actually looks like. And again, what we showed you here is roughly a half acre, actually a little bit less than a half acre. So when you're in the market for land and you're trying to figure out the acreage, that gives you an idea of what it looks like. That's why a lot of people say a football field is something you consider. But if you haven't been on a football field, you can't really grasp the concept of the scale of that either. So if you have to, go to a parking lot, measure out a 208.71 foot square, and that'd give you a rough idea. And that way as you go around looking and somebody says, oh, hey, this property is 5 acres, then as you look at the usable land and the non-usable land, you can say, okay, well, that looks like that's roughly an acre or 2 or an acre and a half. I can do what I want to do homesteading wise. I can garden, I can have chickens, I can do whatever in that space. So it really helps to have a visual representation of that so you know roughly what an acre looks like. Well, Well, coming from a homesteader who has larger acres than others, we appreciate you watching this video. And before you sign out, be sure to check out our Amazon merchandise store where we have our Red Tool House vintage logo shirt. And again, if you would like to buy that shirt, and if you would wear it, take a selfie, send it to us, we'll feature it on an upcoming video. We appreciate the support that offers to our channel. We appreciate you watching this video. If you like it, give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed yet, be sure to subscribe below and check us out on our website at redtoolhouse.com. Take care, everybody.